All right, I guess we can go ahead and start. So, a quick introduction. We're going to be talking about the future technologies of tomorrow today. And it's by Corey, me, and Ziad. And I hope you guys enjoy. Let me skip the slide really quick. All right, Corey, take it away.
I got you. Hi, everybody. Just to give you a further introduction into myself, Corey Thies. I'm a sophomore here at SMC, my second year, and I am actually a civil engineering major. And of course, my video decided to freeze right at that time. But yeah, so a lot of my technologies, there's going to be three of them following, are specifically geared towards civil engineering, a field that I'm personally interested in. The first one, if you have heard of it at all, is geographic information systems. Now, this isn't a, Quentin, you can go to the next slide. GIS and geographic information systems, they're not specific to one exact model. There is no one GIS. There are a variety of different software tools that a lot of industry professionals use in a variety of different fields. Further below, you can see in the slide, we're talking about geological surveying, meteorological predictions. So like forecasting weather patterns. But I think the most important use of it is typically in like public policy decision making. This is deciding, you know, where a hospital might be built based on population density, using like this geographic tool that takes data and analyzes it in a way that can be represented best for human beings. Yeah, so largely they're used to supplement problem-solving processes. Any sort of data that can be publicly made available could be, say, used in a GIS software system, a GIS software platform, and you will be able to gather data in a way that best helps inform a decision-making process. Quinn, we can go on to the next slide. Oh, and just so everybody knows, after the presentation is concluded, I have included, well, saved links to a bunch of different sites that I use to research for this presentation. If you're interested at all, just let me know, and I can send those out to you following the presentation.
Thank you so much. I'd love that.
Yeah, no problem. So the second one that we have here is building information modeling. This was a new one to me when I started researching for this presentation. This is essentially another software model similar to CAD, if any of you have used CAD. We've got examples on the slides right there. But instead of modeling, say, like one object, you're modeling a larger system, an architectural system, essentially. This is a way for civil engineers to fabricate and design infrastructure and buildings on a software model. Now, this might seem like a simple innovation, but given that drafting by hand was both a time-consuming and very labor-intensive process in previous generations, the fact that anybody, even you or me today, if we had a BIM software model, like a platform to use, we could go on it today and we could, you know, design a city. If any of you have maybe played, I don't know, like Civ 6 or Tropico, or any sort of like video game that's based on like modeling, I don't know, like a city or an empire. This is, I mean, essentially the same thing, except much, much, much more sort of like subject matter expert focus. The tools that would be available in a BIM software model are extensive. If you've ever used SolidWorks, for example, which I don't know if any of you have taken Engineering 11, but it would actually be a good way to sort of get an introduction into CAD, computer-aided design. But yeah, I mean, it's SolidWorks, but on a more grand scale. We can go on to the next one. And the next one is not a software model like the previous two, but a physical material that in the upcoming generations is probably going to be critical to a lot of our construction and design projects in the world at large. Next slide, Quentin. So 3D graphene, and we do have a video here. If anybody, maybe we could get like a few thumbs up. I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 would tell me that the majority of you will want to see. But 3D graphene is, if you've ever heard of graphene, it's like the slide says, it's a single layer of carbon atoms arranged in a hexagonal lattice. This specific arrangement of the carbon atoms, given that you're all part of the STEM program, you know what graphene is, it has incredible thermal and electronic properties. Graphene, if I'm not mistaken, is typically used in like the micro-sized chips that we have in all of our electronics. We're talking about laptops, cell phones, etc. Now, the important part about 3D graphene is it's a recent development. A lot of the research for this specific slide came from the 2017 study that the Massachusetts Institute of Technology did. The way that graphene is arranged, it offers to anybody using it a 10 times strength of steel to 5% of steel's density. This is similar to sort of that old like saying that people had where spider silk is stronger than steel. The problem with spider silk is obviously you wouldn't be able to use it on any sort of scale for any sort of project, but 3D graphene you would be able to. The utilization of 3D graphene, I mean, we're talking about immense like potential for use. It could be used in anything from spaceship systems to just like consumer products today. In fact, for researching this slide, I came across an architect who was building an entire house based off of 3D graphene, just basically to show and showcase its properties. But 3D graphene could essentially provide for a number of needs for people today. Now, I saw a lot of thumbs up for watching the video. Quentin, I don't know if the sound will play, but if you want to try playing the video, then maybe we can take a look.
You might have to like reshare and then like enable sound.
Okay.
All right, well,
I'll tell you what. We can push on now and we can continue with the rest, and then we can circle back at the end of the presentation. That way, if it takes like 10 minutes to make work, people can head on out if they don't want to keep waiting. Does that sound okay with everybody?
Fine by me.
All right. We can move on then, Quinn. I don't have anything else.
Sounds good.
Oh, shoot.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Ziad. I'm a bio major. So majority of my my slides will be talking about innovations in the medical field and biological field. So the first technology I want to share is mRNA technology, something you guys have probably heard about during COVID-19. It was used to produce the COVID-19 vaccine most of you guys have. So let's talk about it. So the technology is definitely not new. It's been, it was developed in the 60s, and it was only able to be delivered into cells in the 1970s. So, I mean, that's a pretty long time if you think about the way technology kind of goes about. And the first time we've seen it actually being used in a practical sense, like to actually treat something, was during COVID-19. So the technology's been building up over these years till we finally perfected it for COVID-19, and it was a perfect opportunity to bring it to market. So not only can it treat, because of the way the mRNA vaccine works, not only can it treat COVID-19 infectious diseases such as COVID-19, but it can also treat diseases like cancer by use of the spike protein. And the platform is so flexible that they're now doing human testing of an HIV vaccine for using the mRNA platform. It can treat also.
Changing.
Excuse me.
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, that one's like world changing. That's a long time coming. It's crazy that they're finally making an HIV vaccine.
Yeah, well, they finally perfected the technology to make it. Not only HIV and cancer and COVID-19, but in the future, you're probably going to see malaria, tuberculosis, diseases such as cystic fibrosis, rabies, influenza. So, I mean, mRNA can be used to target basically any pathogen, like by use of the spike protein. Like if you just put in the code for the particular protein, it will stimulate the immune response to create the antibodies. Yeah, and like basically for the future of this technology, because of COVID-19, I do think this like the amount of funding that was put into this technology was something like we've never seen before. So that's why I think this technology will only continue to progress in the future. All right, next slide. So my next slide is about organ bioprinting. It's probably something you've seen in the news, like in the recent times. Next slide. So the reason I chose this is because just in the United States alone, there are 106,075 men, women, and children who are on the organ transplant waiting list as of June 10th this year. And I mean, that's kind of crazy if you think about it, that because there's on average only 6,000 organs via living donors per year. And we only get 8,000 donors, 8,000 donors per year based off like things from accidents and stuff like that. People who actually donate them after they're dead. So at previous slide. So, and then also every day, 17 people die waiting for an organ transplant, according to the Health Resources and Services Administration. And every 9 person, another person gets added to the wait list. And the interesting thing about if you look at the statistics from the Health and Resource Services Administration, is that like more than 90% of the people on the transplant list need a kidney. The other 10% is composed of people who need a heart. So and my second point is heart transplants have a 40% rejection rate, and kidney rejection rates are 25%. So what that means is like via like a natural way, like if you take a transplant from one person to another, these are the rates that it will fail. But with the 3D bioprinting technology, that's not a factor, because the way it works is that they use your cells to cultivate the other cells, which they'll use to feed into the 3D printer to make the models. So there's basically 100% chance that it will not fail, based on like just your body rejecting it. Your body won't reject it. So that's why I think this will be a good technology for the future that people should look out for. All right, my third technology is Neuralink, something that really interested me. Next slide. All right, so first of all, we got to talk about who came up with the idea. So, two professors came up with the idea, Pendra Mossini and Randolph Jay Nudo. They introduced the idea of Neuralink and founded the company, but it was only until later that that a person called Elon Musk bought the company.
Can
So
I
how
weigh
does it
in on
work?
this one? I just want to say
Yeah.
there's so many more BMI stuff, and the history of it goes so much farther before Neuralink. Like there's so much more to brain machine interfaces than just Neuralink. And it like you could buy a DIY kit to program stuff that uses your brain waves as input like today.
Okay, thank you for the addition. All right, so how does it work? So Neuralink plans it plans a surgically implanted mesh into the brain using a needle. After releasing the mesh into the brain, it wraps around the brain ultimately to merge with the brain. Test trials with mice shown that with successful results, and I think they already did start human trials, and just like a couple months ago. So, and the reason why I chose Neuralink is because of the proprietary chip that they have is supposedly it can read double the amount of neurons that the previous technologies did. All right, let's see. So the diseases that it can cure or treat. So nearly 1 billion people on planet Earth suffer from neurological disorders, including such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and the biggest one most people don't talk about is like strokes. So an actor, so Michael J. Fox, a well-known actor, he suffers from Parkinson's diseases, and he uses Neuralink to help him suffer from it, to help him from suffering from it. Let's see. So when would we see this technology be in the mainstream? Would people actually be getting paid to work on it, not just like one company? So it's stated by the company that this device is being used by people without medical need in approximately 10 to 12 years. So people who don't have medical disease, they won't need permission from like the FDA to use this device. Yeah, and then human trials have already started. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. Looks like it's my turn now. So for anybody that doesn't know me, my name is Quentin, and I'm an astrophysics/physics major at SMC. So the topics I'm going to be talking about today will kind of be tailored towards my major. All right. So the first one I'm going to be talking about is quantum computing, which is a bit of an interesting topic because it's still sort of a new technology. There hasn't been much progress for it yet, and there haven't been a lot of applications for it yet. However, if we can get it to work correctly, if we can improve it well enough, it could have a serious amount of benefits if we can perfect it. So in the picture you have here, that's what a quantum computer looks like right now. A bunch of wires. It looks like something pretty complicated, and there's a lot of technology behind it to make it work. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why quantum computing is so important to look into nowadays. And basically, we're reaching a point right now where computer components are being minimized to a scale so small that if they were minimized any further, they would break the laws of physics. And without going into quantum physics too much, the reason for that is that basically once you get down to a quantum level of particles, or to a level where the particles are so small, like smaller than an atom, the laws of physics kind of break down. And so that's why if we were to minimize those computer components more, we wouldn't really be able to understand how they would work. And so the computers wouldn't work. And so that's why perfecting quantum computing is so important, And that's because if we want to progress further in our technology and the computers we have, we need to understand quantum physics a little better. And so, let me see. Okay, and so yeah, the chart that you guys see on the left talks about how the efficiency of a quantum computer can be kind of exponentially increased if you add qubits to it. And qubits are basically the same thing as bits. And for those that aren't too familiar with computers, bits are just basically the pieces of information that a computer uses to kind of carry out its command. And qubits are basically the same thing as a bit, except that there's a little q in front, which kind of corresponds to quantum physics. It's bits, but in quantum computing. And the difference between the two is that while bits, they either give you a number of 0 or 1, so they can either be one of the two values. Qubits can have either value. So a qubit is kind of like a probability. You don't know if it's going to be 1 or 0 until you observe it, which you might have heard in quantum physics, which is if you look at a particle, once you observe it, it'll take on a certain state. But before you observe it, the state is impossible to predict. And so basically, the reason behind this, the low error rate and higher error rate, is that even if you add more qubits to the computer, it's not really going to make it any more powerful if you don't understand how quantum physics works. If you build a computer based on the regular laws of physics, adding more qubits is not going to make it any more powerful. But if you have a low error rate, if you can perfect the understanding of quantum physics and you add more bits to the computer, it'll make it more powerful, just like any other computer. So we have to understand how quantum physics works in order for quantum computers to work. And so on to my next slide. And so like I was saying earlier, quantum computing has a lot of potential. And despite the difficulty in increasing the efficiency of it, there can be a lot of breakthroughs, or there have been a lot of breakthroughs that have already been made in the field. And you can kind of see that on the right. Like I was saying earlier, you need to add more qubits to make a quantum computer more powerful. So you need to understand quantum physics in order to do that. So back in 2010, there weren't a lot of qubits that we could put in a quantum computer for it to work. But as we understand quantum physics more, we can add more qubits. And that progress kind of follows a linear path, or it's expected to follow a linear path. So as time goes on, we should be able to make quantum computers more powerful. And let me see. Sorry, yeah, okay, so back to what I was saying. Essentially, we're nowhere near the point of making quantum computers useful, but sometime in the somewhat near future, according to the graph, maybe like in the 2050s, we should be able to actually use quantum computers for practical use. All right. And so, okay, so for my last two slides, I'll be talking a little bit about the technologies that have been researched in the International Space Station. And the reason why the International Space Station is so important for progressing technology is that it's in space. And the main importance of that is that since it's in space, there's pretty much no gravity on the International Space Station. So researching things like biological processes, changes in human bodies, they work a little bit differently when they're not subjected to gravity. And so we can use the research in microgravity environments to cure diseases, for example, to study aging processes in human cells, to study the blood flow in circulatory systems, to understand how organs work a little better, and just to facilitate research for so many different topics other than just regular biological processes and things that I mentioned earlier. And so one of those examples that I'm going to be talking about is protein crystallization, and specifically how we can use that in microgravity environments to cure diseases. And just to give a little bit of an introduction about what protein crystallization is and why it's important, start with my first point. So basically, certain enzymes or proteins, because enzymes are proteins, they can be used as biomarkers to kind of determine if humans have a certain health condition or disease. So if they're present in the body, we can figure out if somebody has a specific disease or a health condition, such as genetic disorders like muscular dystrophy, or like cancer even, or if they're prone for a heart attack, or if they have a liver disease, etc. And essentially, the way that we can study these proteins to understand them better and to figure out how we can cure those diseases that they're associated with is that we can crystallize them in certain chemical processes. And this is important in a microgravity environment because the crystals, they grow slower and they grow more orderly, which also causes them to grow larger and in more complex shapes. And since they grow more complex, we can, I guess the research that we get when we study them can be a little bit more precise. The shapes of the protein crystals are more complex. And go on to my next slide. But yeah, so if we can perfect this, we can pretty much eradicate all the diseases that I have listed right here. So things like salmonella, which affects more than 90 million people every year, believe it or not. Stuff like cystic fibrosis, heart attacks, and liver disease, like I mentioned earlier. DMD, which is a type of genetic disorder for muscular dystrophy, like I mentioned earlier. And then we can also help figure out how to reverse the damaging of DNA. And as some of you may know, damaged DNA results in a lot of health complications like cancer and other DNA-related conditions. And so, on to my next slide. I had a video to show you guys here, but it looks like it didn't format. So I apologize for that. But it basically describes how we can study these crystals to understand how to cure the diseases that they're associated with a little bit better. So on to my next slide. I'm going to be talking about tissue chips in microgravity environments. And the study of these kind of works similarly to how you would study protein crystals, for example. And the reason for that being is that they're also in microgravity environments. And like I mentioned, the biological processes that happen inside of these tissue chips, which I will describe in just a moment, they occur more slowly. So it's easier to study them. And so just to give a quick description about tissue chips, they're just like these small little vessels. So as you see in the picture on the right, they're like these small little like polymer material cards where you can inject things like human cells into them. And you can also inject other things to test the interaction between those cells and solutions of certain mixtures, for example, like blood or diseases like cancer or drugs. So the scientists or the researchers on the ISS, they study the interactions on these in a microgravity environment. And so like I was saying, it's very similar to the concept of studying protein crystallization. The interactions between the cells and the solutions can be researched more thoroughly because they occur more slowly, they develop in a more organized fashion, and they can also be stored for longer in microgravity conditions. And I guess the main idea of studying it in microgravity is that since it's in microgravity, the process isn't influenced as much by the force of gravity. And as you know, forces is what makes things move. It causes motion. So if the force of gravity is lacking, the process is going to develop more slowly. And all right. So it looks like that's all I had to talk about today. But yeah, thank you guys all for attending. And if you have any questions, you can always email us about the topics that we talked about, and we'll be more than happy to answer. But yeah, thank you guys for attending.
Ziad, I see your mouth moving, but I think you're muted. If you were trying to talk to us.
I was muted the whole time. Oh my god. I said I just posted the link to the mentor workshop sign-in sheet, and I'm saying go ahead, fill it out so you can get credit for it, because I think when you're part of the STEM program, you do need 2 of them, I believe, a semester. So yeah, go fill it out. If anyone doesn't have any questions, thank you guys for coming in.